to the Military Musician Podcast. Thanks for tuning in to episode 0, an introduction to the Military Musician Podcast, a retake. I decided to do a retake of this episode for a few different reasons. One was the ease of editing. Once I started this project of podcast recording and editing, I found it takes a lot of time, and I'm currently a grad student at the University of Northern Colorado, and I am also a freelance musician and a military musician, so a lot of different things going on. This is just kind of a side project. I also wanted to retake this episode to sound more natural. The last episode that I recorded, originally it took me a lot of time to record myself and then edit it to make it where I wanted it to sound, and it still wasn't what I wanted it to sound like, and it was not as natural flowing. So there you have it. I'm going to be releasing these episodes where I kind of ramble on naturally as I would in a regular conversation. But the biggest reason I wanted to do a retake of this episode was to announce the launch of our first series for the Military Musician Podcast. I started this podcast, I should say, not a project, it's an actual thing, a podcast. I started the podcast to basically just bring knowledge to musicians about the musical opportunities to serve your country as a military musician. So what we're going to be covering is I'm going to be interviewing different military musicians and kind of covering what they do in their career, how they got there in their career, and any projects that they're working on. It's basically, I'm just trying to get people more interested and aware of the different opportunities in the military. A lot of times people think of military musicians, the immediate thought is, oh, Pershing's Own, or the President's Own, or the United States Navy Band in Washington, D.C. All of the premier bands, they get a lot of attention and a lot of people wanting to go for those jobs. And man, I admire that. Those are awesome. That's an awesome gig. I wish I could do that someday. I have no idea what my timeline of my life plays out, but I'm a part of a National Guard band. I'm a part of the 43rd Army Band of the Nebraska National Guard, and that career is awesome in itself too. So with this Military Musician Podcast, the first 3 episodes are going to be talking about being in a National Guard band, being in an active duty band, and being in a premier band. I have 3 guests that I'm still editing their episodes, and once I release them, I will do a big launch on social media. Speaking of social media, the Military Musician Podcast has a Facebook page. I encourage you to go check that out. What I've done is I've just looked up all of the Army bands, Air Force bands, Navy bands, Marine bands, the Coast Guard band. I've looked up all of their social media accounts, and I've liked them through the Military Musician Podcast. So I have a separate feed of just like tons of military musician stuff, and the Military Musician Podcast, I'm retweeting and resharing all of the information that's being put out there. So, for instance, my last post was from the United States Navy Band. They're hiring a jazz trombone position for the Navy Band Commodores. You can find more information about that on navyband.navy.mil. Hi, Theodore. That's my cat. He's walking around. Hi, bud. After that, I posted the opening for the President's Own recording engineer. Yeah, a recording engineer. Pretty cool job. Can you be quiet, please? Thanks. There's also the United States Army Field Band. They have a vacancy for trumpet also. So This is going to be really fun to listen to later. If you go on to Facebook and Twitter and search Military Musician Podcast, you'll get all of the up-to-date vacancies for different groups. Any cool performances, any opportunities. I like sharing things and getting people excited about music. That's one of the reasons I started this, is I want people to know about the military music ensembles, and I want musicians to know of different career opportunities for them to make a difference in. Episode 1 of the Military Musician Podcast will feature Allison Fletcher, a performer and teacher of flute and piccolo in Bowie, Maryland. She began her military career in 2010 with the 43rd Army Band of the Nebraska National Guard, and she joined the flute section of the United States Navy Band in 2014 and is also a flutist in the Navy Band's Woodwind Quintet. So I'll be talking to my friend Allison about her career, of how she got into the Navy Band and how she transitioned from the National Guard to a premier band. And I would like to add a disclaimer to every episode that all of the information on this podcast and on social media is considered unclassified information. The sole purpose of this podcast and website and social media is to promote the service of musicians in the military. This concludes episode 0. Thanks for tuning in. I hope to hear from you until the next episode, which I will definitely let you know when it comes out. Thanks. All music in this recording was created by myself, Jason Lenz. You can find this music on my SoundCloud page at Jason Lenz Music.